I have another interesting question from Samir, who was our panelist last time. And the question is, how relevant is legacy building in a crisis? And do leaders behave differently in a crisis? And does crisis throw up a completely different opportunity for legacy building?
Samir, thank you for connecting with me in advance. I so enjoyed your previous piece. A couple of thoughts on your question. How relevant is legacy building in a crisis? I believe it is extremely relevant, and I'll say why. I think it establishes for us as individuals initially, but then for our teams and for our organizations, a sense of purpose. A sense of purpose. And I will come back to purpose a little bit later on, if I may, guys, Alok and Sangram, because I think if we have something that is important, something that is worth doing, then it can mobilize people. It can energize people. And I'd like to get on in a few minutes to my take on Leadership 3.0. And I think that might help to answer this part of the question. But I want to make this point that if you look around, if you actually Google or Bing or whatever your search engine of choice is, leadership pandemic, you'll get a lot of hits. And any of the consultancies that are out there, McKinsey, all of the big name consultancies, all of the business schools, including my own, including London Business School, have answers. Unfortunately, the answers are very shallow. The answers are a little bit general. I mean, take a look, make your own judgment. But on one site, I saw, what have you got to do now in the crisis is take care of yourself, actually, gentlemen and ladies. Be careful, look after you. Not at all thoughtful about the organization, not at all practical, because of course, no one has experienced this before. The other issue about almost all of the thought leaders in the world, there's one or two exceptions. I particularly love the work of Linda Gratton, my colleague at London Business School. She is actively researching what the pandemic means for organizations and doing polls much as you guys are. So take a look at the work of Linda Gratton. But there are other sources of information out there, very general, generic information, and also very local, parochial, I would say, and very, very Western. I would urge you to believe more in the comments and advice of the men and women working within your organization, because they are much closer to the challenges that you immediately face. So Samir, I believe that legacy building, focusing on the really important things that need doing, is significant in a crisis, because they are going to be about one of two things: either survival. We need to survive this. So what needs fixing? What do we need to build to survive? But not just to survive. What do we need to do to thrive in this time? And those are likely to be big issues. There are going to be some small tweaks around the edges that we can take to make things happen. Of course, working from home, virtual working, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the coffee, the water cooler conversations? I know, Alok, that's something you miss a lot, is the water cooler conversations, just bumping into people in the corridor. That's gone. So how do we replicate that sharing of knowledge? The second part of your question, and I'm in danger of getting so excited, I will just go completely off agenda here, which is, stop me if I'm going off topic, guys.
Just keep going.
I think you're right that the crisis does throw up different opportunities. And I think particularly it's different opportunities about leadership for me, in my area, in my domain of experience. So it throws up different opportunities. And the primary opportunity is to reflect on, what does leadership mean for me? What does leadership mean for me? Because I think in the current context that we live in on a daily basis, it's all up in the air. Guys, can I pick up on Leadership 3.0 here?
Absolutely. That is the next question. Just go ahead and do it.
I've been looking at leadership for 25 years and leading companies of my own and failing bitterly in companies of my own. I launched a great company about .com strategy in 1999. And for those of you that were born in 1999 or before 1999, you'll know that was the year of the .com crash. So my timing is superb. So don't do anything when I say you should do it. That's just a little hint. But if you go back to what leadership used to be thought of in the world, it was leadership 1.0, if you like, was about charisma. It was about the charismatic leader, and all the literature and the research and all the models of successful leaders were middle-aged white, usually Western men. Charismatic individuals. And so charismatic leadership theory was all the rage. And you can see it in the books that we would see in the Heathrow Business School bookshop. You know, the airport bookstores were full of Jack Welch, Lee Iacocca. This was the model of leadership. Be a strong, aggressive, dictatorial leader. And then in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, we began to see what I call leadership 2.0, which was the move towards getting people to work together. And you saw people like John Katzenbach at Harvard Business School talking about the wisdom of teams. It's about collaboration. So collaboration is leadership 2.0, getting teams of people to work together, because we know that a team of people working together, a firm of people, an institution working together is far more productive than one person saying, do this, do that, and then everybody else just being a zombie pair of hands. We don't want zombies working for us just doing exactly what we say. We want teams working innovatively, working proactively to solve problems. And that lasted for about 15, 20 years. And this a recent move to try and get back to what charismatic leadership was, to have the individual in charge, but a much more honest way of doing it. And there's a trend that I'm a little bit uncertain about at the moment called authentic leadership, but let me park that for a second. I believe, and Samir, this kind of goes some way towards your, again, to your question. I believe that leadership 3.0, which is, I believe, relevant now, is not charisma. Individuals telling people what to do can't help right now. It is to some extent collaboration, but above all, leadership 3.0 is about community. Leadership 3.0 is about community building and pulling people together and saying, we are a community. This is what we stand for. This is what we're trying to do. And it's a much more a we-focused initiative than even collaboration. Collaboration, I want my teams to do well. But I think this idea of creating communities, I think it should, Alok, I think you will understand this, the creation of a culture of people who know exactly what needs doing and can figure things out and have a sense of identity. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. That's what we need right now. And I wrote a paper based on some research I was doing at the very start of this COVID pandemic, because I believe that the pandemic has made us all startups. I believe that if you want a hashtag, we are all startups now. I think there are some groups, legal firms, regulatory firms, some finance firms are doing extremely well because we're all trying to figure things out. But the rest of us, we are all startups now. And why do I say that? If you think of a startup, look, maybe I'm going to ask you something on this. When you are building a startup and you are the startup king on this, you're identifying people, you're hiring people, you're sort of hiring people. I haven't started as many organizations as you, but you're looking for people who share a mindset or a mentality or a particular kind of culture. Tell me a little bit, briefly, if you would, about when you are building a startup, what kind of people are you looking for, and how do you align them to the vision? I would love just a couple of minutes on that, and then I'll pick up on that. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. In fact, we've done that. We have a startup, and so and Samir also spoke about it a little while ago. So you want people who are at least aligned to the purpose, the overall purpose. They believe that you're going to do something which is different, which makes a difference to the world. but you also make sure you have people who are not your mimics, because then everyone thinks alike. So if you are a person who cannot see risk but opportunity, you need to have people who can see who can manage the opportunity and see risk and balance it. So it's a team, and everyone's doing everything. I mean, if it is a startup, all of you are doing all the work. So there is no hierarchy. You're discussing, you're working 18 hours a day. That's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what we see. In a startup, you have, if we see the leaders and the managers, imagine a Venn diagram. Let me paint one in midair. Here's the leaders and managers and the people directing the business from the beginning. And then you also have the men and women who are delivering the business. And what we see in startups is a huge overlap, because it's much clearer what it is we're trying to do, and everybody understands the direction. As an organization ages and the men and women who are actually doing the work, you see these, the culture sort of teases apart. There was a brilliant American television series called Undercover Boss not so long ago. And the idea of go back to the shop floor and find out what's really going on. They would disguise themselves or wear a hat, and nobody knows what the top executives look like anyway. I urge you, take a look at these. A lot of these episodes for Undercover Boss are on YouTube, and you can watch the shock of the senior executives as they discover what the lower employees and men and women within the organization find, because it's completely separated. But what we're seeing now in COVID times is a greater clarity of what we need to do, and everyone is willing to pull together. So back to Sameer's point, there's an opportunity here for greater clarity, to your point that I hope will come up in your next book, Alok, that vision is not enough, that it's also very much about everybody understanding that and pulling together in the same direction. And if that's the case, then we are building a legacy of community, that we are all in this together and we all know roughly what direction we're going in. We need to survive for our sake, and we also need to thrive to continue to build going forward. I'm going to get sucked into a time loop here and completely run out of time. So I'm going to pause it there and say, I hope that's enough to be going on with. We are all startups now. And while we are all together focused on the survival of our business and thriving, there is a huge, Sameer, leadership opportunity to carry people forward and say, this, the very business itself, this is our legacy, to keep it alive and thriving.